The rumble of the truck's engine was a constant companion, a low and steady hum that wrapped around me as the miles rolled by. The open road was my sanctuary, a place where my thoughts ran free, and I could let myself imagine a world beyond the endless stretches of asphalt. For years, I'd been a long-haul trucker, crisscrossing the country to provide for Mary and me. It was a life I loved in many ways, but it was also one that kept me away from home far too often. Mary had always been patient about my absences, and I never took that for granted. She was the love of my life, the kind of woman who made the world brighter just by walking into a room. Her laugh, her smile, the way her green eyes sparkled when she talked about something she was passionate about, it was all magic to me. But even with all that love, there was a part of me that craved something different, something I'd kept buried for years. It wasn't dissatisfaction, not even close. If anything, it was the depth of my love for Mary that made this desire so persistent. For as long as I could remember, I had fantasized about her being with another man. The thought of her being desired, pursued, and ultimately taking pleasure in someone else's arms, it thrilled me in ways I didn't fully understand. And it wasn't just the fantasy of her stepping outside our marriage, it was the idea of her coming back to me afterward, radiant and unapologetic, and sharing every detail with me. I didn't know where this desire came from. Was it jealousy? Pride? A combination of the two? All I knew was that the idea consumed me during the long hours on the road. I'd imagine her out with another man, laughing and flirting, and then returning home to tell me everything. I'd feel a pang of jealousy, sure, but it was always overwhelmed by the excitement, the pride, and the deep satisfaction of knowing she was happy, free, and still mine. For years, I kept it to myself. How could I tell Mary something like this? She might think I didn't love her or, worse, that I wanted her to find someone better than me. But neither was true. This was about trust, about letting her live a part of herself that most people never get to explore. And maybe, just maybe, it was about me living it through her too. One evening, after a particularly grueling 2-week trip, I decided it was time to tell her. I'd rehearsed the words 1,000 times in my head, but when the moment came, they felt clumsy and inadequate. Mary had made lasagna for dinner, the scent of garlic and cheese filling our little kitchen as we sat down to eat. She looked beautiful, as always, her auburn hair glowing in the warm light. "Mary," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "can I ask you something? And I need you to promise you'll hear me out before you say anything." She looked up from her plate, her expression curious. "Of course, Mike. What's on your mind?" I hesitated, my heart pounding. "Have you ever thought about trying something different? Something a little unconventional?" Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Different how? Like taking up skydiving or something?" "Not exactly." I set my fork down, unable to meet her gaze. "I mean in our relationship. With us." She leaned back, her curiosity now mixed with something else, concern, maybe. "Okay, what kind of different are we talking about?" I took a deep breath. "Mary, I love you more than anything. But I've been thinking, with me being gone so much, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing if you spent time with someone else. Someone who could keep you company when I'm not here." Her eyes widened, and I rushed to explain. "Not because I don't want to be here," I said quickly. "But because I want you to be happy, even when I can't be around. And I'd want you to tell me about it. All of it." I know it sounds crazy, but it's something I've thought about for a long time. For a moment, Mary said nothing. The silence stretched between us, and I felt my stomach churn. I braced myself for her to laugh, or yell, or even leave the table. But then she surprised me. "You're serious?" she asked, her tone more curious than angry. I nodded. "I am. It's not because I love you any less. If anything, it's because I love you so much. I want to give you something that most people never would: freedom. Trust. And I want us to share that together." Mary studied me for a long moment. Then, to my utter amazement, a smile tugged at her lips. "That's not what I expected to hear tonight," she said. "But you know what? It's intriguing. Tell me more." Over the next hour, I poured my heart out. I told her about the fantasies I'd kept hidden for years, about the pride and excitement I felt at the thought of her being desired by another man. I told her how much I trusted her, how much this wasn't just about me, but about us, about strengthening our bond in a way that few couples could ever imagine. By the time I finished, Mary's smile had grown wider. "You know," she said, "I think I understand. It's bold, Mike. But it excites me too. The thought of being with someone else, and then coming back to you, sharing it with you, it's thrilling." A wave of relief washed over me. "So, you'd be willing to try it?" "I think I would," she said. "But we need to set some boundaries. I want this to be something we do together, even if we're apart." We spent the rest of the evening talking, laying out ground rules and exploring the possibilities. There would be no secrets. Whatever happened, she would share it with me. If either of us felt uncomfortable, we could stop anytime. It wasn't about pressure or obligation, it was about trust, love, and the freedom to explore. The next morning, as I loaded my truck and prepared to hit the road, Mary kissed me goodbye. Her lips lingered on mine, and there was something new in the way she looked at me, a spark of excitement, a sense of adventure. "Drive safe," she said, her voice soft but filled with energy. "And don't worry, I'll keep myself busy." As I pulled onto the highway, the sun rising over the horizon, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I wasn't just heading off to work, I was heading into a new chapter of our lives. What lay ahead, I didn't know. But I trusted Mary, and I trusted us. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The road stretched endlessly before me, but my thoughts were miles away, back at home with Mary. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple as I settled into the rhythm of the drive. Though the steady hum of the truck's engine usually lulled me into a meditative state, tonight, it couldn't compete with the storm of emotions brewing inside me. Mary had agreed. Not just to humor me, not just to indulge a fleeting whim, she had truly embraced the idea. We had spent hours talking, laying out rules and boundaries, but even with all the planning, I still didn't know what to expect. Would she go through with it? And if she did, how would I feel when she told me? That evening, as I parked at a rest stop and settled into the small bunk behind the driver's seat, my phone buzzed. I grabbed it quickly, my pulse racing. "Mary, hey, just wanted to let you know. I've been talking to someone." For a moment, I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. It was happening, really happening. With trembling fingers, I typed back a reply. "Me, that's great, Mary. How's it going?" Her response came almost immediately. "Mary, his name is Richard. He's kind and funny. We're planning to meet tomorrow. I'll keep you posted." I stared at her words, letting them sink in. A mixture of emotions swirled inside me: excitement, nervousness, a twinge of jealousy, and something deeper that I couldn't quite name. I wanted this. I had wanted it for years. And now that it was becoming real, it was even more thrilling than I had imagined. The next day passed in a haze. I delivered my cargo, filled out paperwork, and drove to my next destination, all the while checking my phone obsessively. By the time I parked for the night, I still hadn't heard from Mary, and the suspense was driving me insane. Finally, as I was finishing up a sandwich in the truck stop diner, my phone buzzed again. "Mary, just got home. Can I call you?" I practically jumped out of my seat, abandoning the remains of my dinner as I hurried back to my truck. Sliding into the driver's seat, I hit the call button. "Mary?" I said, my voice cracking slightly. "Hi, Mike," she replied. Her voice was soft but carried an undercurrent of excitement. "I wanted to tell you about tonight." I leaned back in the seat, my heart racing. "I'm listening." Mary began to recount her evening, and as she spoke, I could hear the smile in her voice. She had met Richard at a quiet wine bar downtown. He had been just as charming in person as he was in their messages, polite, attentive, and easy to talk to. She described their conversation, the way he made her laugh, the compliments he gave her. "I was nervous at first," she admitted. "But he put me at ease. He's different from you, of course, but in a good way. He's thoughtful, and he listens really well." I listened intently, hanging on to every word. Her descriptions painted a vivid picture in my mind: Mary, sitting at a small table in her black dress, her emerald eyes sparkling under the soft glow of the bar lights, laughing at Richard's jokes. I could almost see him leaning closer, drawn in by her warmth and beauty. And then, when we were leaving, she continued, her voice lowering slightly, he walked me to my car. He kissed me, Mike. Just once, but it was nice. It felt exciting. The air seemed to thicken around me as I absorbed her words. A kiss. My wife had kissed another man. My stomach twisted with a strange, electric energy, a blend of jealousy and pride, of possessiveness and exhilaration. How did it feel? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause, and then Mary said, it felt good, Mike. Not better or worse than being with you, just different. New. And I think that's what makes it exciting. But the whole time, I kept thinking about how much I wanted to tell you about it. It wouldn't mean anything if I couldn't share it with you. A wave of relief and affection washed over me. I'm glad you feel that way, Mary. That's what this is about, us, sharing everything. We talked late into the night, her recounting every detail, and me soaking it all in like a man drinking water after days in the desert. The way Richard looked at her, the sound of his laugh, the way her heart raced when he leaned in for that kiss, it was all intoxicating. By the time we hung up, I felt closer to Mary than I had in years. This wasn't just a fantasy anymore, it was real. And the reality was better than I had ever imagined. Lying in my bunk, staring up at the ceiling, I replayed her words in my mind. I pictured her with Richard, the way she had described it, and instead of feeling threatened or hurt, I felt proud. Mary was incredible, and another man had seen that, too. But she was mine, and she had shared this experience with me because she trusted me completely. As sleep finally began to overtake me, I found myself smiling. This was only the beginning, and I couldn't wait to see where it would take us. The days stretched on, and though the road demanded my focus, my thoughts were still with Mary. Her story about Richard had stayed with me, replaying in my mind like a favorite song. The way she described him, the kiss they shared, the thrill in her voice as she recounted every detail, it all felt like fuel for a fire that had been smoldering inside me for years. When her next message came, it arrived with the same electric jolt of excitement. Mary, Richard asked me out again. We're meeting tonight. I sat in the truck cab, staring at the screen and letting the words sink in. The excitement was immediate, accompanied by that familiar twinge of jealousy. I wanted to know everything, what they would talk about, where they'd go, how she'd feel, but for now, all I could do was wait. Me, that's great, Mary. Have fun. And don't hold back, I want to hear every detail. Mary, you will. I promise. The hours leading up to our evening were agonizing. I imagined her getting ready, standing in front of the mirror in our bedroom, carefully applying her makeup, choosing just the right outfit. I pictured her excitement, the way her cheeks would flush as she prepared to see Richard again. It was intoxicating and maddening all at once. That night, as I parked at a truck stop and leaned back in my seat, her first message came through. Mary, I just arrived. He's here already. Wish me luck. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. The knowledge that she was there, with him, sent a flood of emotions through me. I wanted to respond, to tell her how much I wished I could see her in that moment, but I held back. This was her time. The next few hours crawled by. I checked my phone repeatedly, waiting for any sign from her. Finally, just as I was about to drift off, the phone buzzed again. Mary, I'm home. Can I call? I sat up instantly, adrenaline chasing away any trace of fatigue. Yes, I replied, barely able to type the word before my phone lit up with her call. Mary, I said as I answered, my voice trembling slightly. How was it? Her voice was breathless, full of energy. It was amazing, Mike. I don't even know where to start. Start at the beginning, I said, leaning back in my seat. I want to hear everything. She laughed softly, a sound that sent a rush of warmth through me. Okay. We went to this little restaurant downtown, cozy, candlelit. Richard was already waiting for me when I got there, and he stood up when I walked in, like a real gentleman. He looked really handsome tonight. My chest tightened at her words, but it wasn't unpleasant. I could picture it perfectly: Mary walking into the restaurant, stunning in whatever dress she'd chosen, and Richard rising to greet her, captivated by her presence. "What did you wear?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop myself. "My red dress," she said, her voice teasing. "The one you like." I smiled, imagining the way she would have looked in it, the way Richard must have reacted. "Good choice," I said. "Go on." She described their dinner in vivid detail: the food, the conversation, the way Richard made her laugh. "He's so attentive," she said. "He asks questions, really listens. And he's funny, Mike. You'd like him." "And how did you feel?" I asked. "I felt beautiful," she admitted, her voice soft. "The way he looked at me, like I was the only woman in the world, it was intoxicating. But it wasn't just about him. I kept thinking about you, about how much I wanted to tell you everything. That made it even better." Her words sent a rush of pride and affection through me. This was what I had wanted: to see her happy, confident, and desired, but still grounded in the trust we shared. "What happened after dinner?" I asked, my voice low. There was a pause, and then she said, "He invited me to his place for a drink." I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening. And I went," she said. "We talked for a while, just sitting on his couch. But then he kissed me, Mike. Really kissed me." My grip on the phone tightened, my breath hitching. "Tell me everything," I said. Her voice lowered, taking on a more intimate tone. It was different this time. He was confident, but gentle. He touched my face, my neck, and then, well, one thing led to another. I closed my eyes, letting her words wash over me. She described their intimacy in detail: the way he touched her, the way she responded, the sensations she felt. It was almost too much to bear, and yet, I hung on to every word. "And then," she said, her voice softening, "after it was over, I thought about you. About how much I wanted to come home and tell you everything. Because no matter what happened, Mike, you're the one I love. You're the one I always come back to." Her words hit me like a freight train. Jealousy, pride, love, and desire all tangled together in a storm of emotion. "I'm so proud of you, Mary," I said finally. "For being brave, for trusting me, and for sharing this with me. You have no idea how much this means to me." We stayed on the phone for hours, talking, sharing, and reconnecting in a way that felt deeper than ever before. By the time we hung up, I was left with a strange but undeniable sense of peace. Lying in the cab of my truck, staring up at the stars through the windshield, I realized that this was what I had been waiting for. Mary was happy, and that made me happy. This wasn't just a fantasy anymore, it was our reality, and I couldn't wait to see what the next chapter would bring. The highway stretched endlessly before me, a ribbon of silver beneath the morning sun. My truck roared steadily along, the rhythm of the tires on the asphalt usually a source of comfort. But today, it couldn't drown out the whirlwind of emotions coursing through me. Mary's voice still echoed in my mind, recounting every detail of her night with Richard. She had been so open, so honest, describing everything: the way he touched her, the way she felt, the thrill of being desired by another man. I should have felt jealousy tearing me apart, but instead, there was a different kind of ache, a mixture of pride, excitement, and an almost unbearable longing to be back home with her. This was what I had dreamed of for so long. And now that it was happening, it was more intense than I ever imagined. I stopped at a rest area, stepping out to stretch my legs. The crisp morning air bit at my skin as I leaned against the side of the truck, lighting a cigarette to steady my nerves. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I quickly pulled it out, half expecting another message from Mary. It was her. "Mary, how are you feeling today? Still okay with everything?" I stared at the message for a moment, a faint smile tugging at my lips. She was checking on me, making sure I wasn't overwhelmed by what we had started. That care, that thoughtfulness, was why I loved her so much. "Me, I'm good, Mary. More than good. I've been thinking about you all morning. About us." I feel closer to you than ever. Her reply came almost immediately. Mary, I feel the same. Thank you for trusting me with this. It means the world to me. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, finishing my cigarette as I stared out at the horizon. This wasn't just about fulfilling a fantasy. It was about trust, about love, and about exploring something that had brought us even closer together. That evening, parked at a truck stop just outside St. Louis, I called Mary. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. Hi, Mike, she said. Hey, sweetheart, I replied, settling back in the driver's seat. How was your day? Good, she said. Quiet. I'd been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. Me too, I admitted. It's been intense, hasn't it? She laughed softly. That's one way to put it. Can I ask you something? Anything, I said. How did you feel when I told you about Richard? About what we did? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. At first, I felt jealous, I admitted. Hearing you talk about another man touching you, making you feel good, it was hard. But that jealousy didn't last long. Because right after, I felt proud. Proud that you were confident enough to explore this, and proud that you trusted me enough to share it. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Proud, she echoed. Yes, I said firmly. Proud of you, Mary. And proud of us. What we're doing isn't easy, but it's honest. And it's making us stronger. Her voice softened. I'm so glad to hear that, Mike. Because as much as I enjoyed being with Richard, it wouldn't mean anything if I couldn't share it with you. That's what makes this so special. We talked for hours, diving deep into our emotions and what this new chapter of our lives meant for us. Mary confessed that she had been nervous at first, unsure if she could go through with it. But once she saw how much it brought us closer together, those doubts faded. Do you want to see him again? I asked finally, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. Yes, she said after a pause. If you're okay with it. I am, I said. And I meant it. The following days passed in a blur of long drives and late-night phone calls. Mary saw Richard again, and each time, she shared every detail with me. Her stories were vivid, painting pictures in my mind of their time together. The way he made her laugh, the way he touched her, the way she felt in his arms, it was all laid bare, and I drank it in like a man starved for connection. And through it all, the bond between Mary and me only grew stronger. I had never felt closer to her, never felt more certain of our love. This wasn't just about her exploring new experiences, it was about us building something deeper, something more honest than anything we had ever known. Late one night, as I parked at another truck stop and prepared to settle in for the night, my phone buzzed again. It was Mary. Mary, I miss you, Mike. I can't wait for you to come home. Me, I miss you too, Mary. And I can't wait to kiss you and hear all about everything in person. Her reply made my heart race. Mary, and I can't wait to see you. I want to tell you everything, and I want to show you how much I love you. Lying in the bunk of my truck, I stared at the ceiling, a smile playing on my lips. This journey we had started wasn't just about fulfilling a fantasy. It was about discovering new depths of love and trust, about breaking free from the constraints of convention and embracing something uniquely ours. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I wasn't afraid. For the first time in years, I felt like Mary and I were truly living, not just going through the motions of life, but embracing it fully, together. And as I drifted off to sleep, I knew one thing for certain, I was ready for whatever came next. The hum of the truck's engine felt different today, not its usual steady rhythm, but almost like a countdown. Each mile brought me closer to home, closer to Mary, and the anticipation was electric. This trip had been unlike any other. The time away hadn't just been spent working, it had been a journey of emotions and connection, fueled by the stories Mary had shared with me. I was eager to see her, to feel her warmth, to kiss her lips again and know that despite everything, she was still mine. But more than that, I was excited to hear her voice in person, recounting the adventures she'd had while I was gone. As I turned onto our street, the sight of our small house filled me with a deep sense of belonging. The porch light was on, glowing warmly against the twilight, and I could see Mary's silhouette in the window. She was waiting for me. I parked the truck and stepped out, my boots crunching against the gravel driveway. The front door opened before I even reached it, and there she was radiant, her smile lighting up her entire face. "Mike," she said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "Mary," I replied, dropping my bag and pulling her into my arms. Her embrace was everything I'd been longing for, her warmth, her scent, her presence. I kissed her, and for a moment, the world fell away. But as our lips parted, I caught a faint hint of something unfamiliar. It wasn't unpleasant, just different. My heart raced as I realized what it was, a trace of another man. Instead of anger or jealousy, a surge of excitement washed over me. This was exactly what we had agreed upon, and now it was real, tangible. "You're home," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I am," I replied. "And I've been waiting to hear everything." Her cheeks flushed, and she took my hand, leading me inside. The house was warm and inviting, the table set with 2 glasses of wine and a plate of snacks. She had thought of everything, making this moment as special as it could be. We sat down together, and for a few moments, there was only silence. I could see the mix of emotions in her eyes: excitement, nervousness, a hint of vulnerability. "Mary," I said, reaching for her hand. "You don't have to hold back. I want to hear it all." She nodded, taking a sip of wine to steady herself. Then, she began. Mary's voice was steady as she recounted her nights with Richard, her words painting vivid pictures in my mind. She described the dinners they shared, the way he made her feel special, the moments of intimacy that followed. "He's kind," she said, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "And attentive. He makes me laugh, and he's so patient. But the whole time, Mike, I kept thinking about you. About how much I wanted to come home and tell you everything." Her words sent a rush of warmth through me. I leaned forward, hanging on to every detail she shared. The way he touched her, the way she responded, the sensations that filled her, it was all laid bare, and I listened without judgment, only fascination. "And then, when it was over," she said, her voice softening, "he held me for a while, and I thought about how lucky I was to have you. This wouldn't mean anything if I couldn't share it with you, Mike. That's what makes it special." I reached out, taking her hand in mine. "Thank you for sharing this with me, Mary. For trusting me, and for letting us experience this together. It means more than I can put into words." Tears glistened in her eyes as she smiled. "You mean the world to me, Mike. This has been incredible. But it's only because we've done it together." Later that evening, as we lay in bed, Mary nestled against my chest, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Her stories had brought us closer, peeling back layers of our relationship that I hadn't even realized were there. "Are you happy?" I asked, running my fingers through her hair. "I am," she replied without hesitation. "Happier than I've been in a long time. Not because of Richard, but because of us. Because we've been honest, and we've explored this together." Her words settled deep within me, affirming everything I had hoped for. "And you?" she asked, her voice soft. "How do you feel about all of this?" I took a moment to gather my thoughts. "I feel free," I said finally. "Free from the fear of holding back, free to love you in a way that's completely open and honest. This has been one of the most intense experiences of my life, Mary, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." She lifted her head to look at me, her eyes shining with affection. "I love you, Mike." "I love you too," I said, pulling her closer. As we drifted off to sleep, I felt a deep sense of peace. This journey we had started wasn't conventional, but it was ours. It was built on trust, love, and the courage to explore something new. And as the night wrapped around us, I knew that this was only the beginning. There was so much more to discover, and I was ready for it all. As long as Mary was by my side, the sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a golden glow over the room. Mary was still asleep, her breathing soft and steady as she rested against my chest. I lay there, watching her, my mind swirling with everything we had been through over the past few weeks. This was the moment I had dreamed of, the culmination of trust, love, and shared vulnerability. It hadn't been an easy journey. There were moments of doubt, flashes of jealousy, and the occasional pang of insecurity. But those moments had only strengthened the bond between us, forcing us to confront our fears and grow closer. As Mary stirred, her eyes fluttering open, I leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Good morning," I said softly. "Good morning," she replied, her voice laced with warmth. She smiled, her green eyes still heavy with sleep. "What are you thinking about?" "You," I said. "Us. Everything we've been through." She propped herself up on one elbow, her expression curious. "And how do you feel about it all?" I took a deep breath, letting my thoughts settle before answering. "I feel grateful, Mary. Grateful that we've built a relationship where we can be so open with each other. Grateful that you've trusted me enough to explore this. And grateful that, through it all, we've only grown stronger." Her hand reached for mine, her fingers intertwining with my own. "I feel the same way, Mike. This has been transformative. It's like we've peeled back every layer of who we are, and now there's nothing left but honesty and love." Her words touched something deep within me. This wasn't just about fulfilling a fantasy, it was about breaking free from the constraints of convention and discovering a connection that was uniquely ours. Later that day, as we shared coffee at the kitchen table, the conversation turned to the future. "Do you think you'll see Richard again?" I asked, my tone curious rather than accusatory. Mary hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I think so. But only if you're okay with it, Mike. This isn't just about me, it's about us." I appreciated her thoughtfulness, the way she always prioritized our relationship above everything else. "I want you to be happy, Mary," I said. "If seeing him makes you happy, then I'm okay with it. Just promise me one thing." "Anything," she said, leaning forward. "Keep being honest with me. Tell me everything, just like you've been doing. That's what makes this work." She smiled, her hand reaching across the table to touch mine. "I promise, Mike. No secrets. Always honesty." As the weeks went by, our lives settled into a new rhythm. I returned to the road, my truck once again carrying me across the country, but the loneliness that used to haunt me during those long drives was gone. Mary and I talked every day, sharing everything, her adventures, my thoughts, and the ways we continued to grow together. She saw Richard a few more times, and each encounter brought new stories, new insights into herself and our relationship. She was always open with me, sharing every detail, and I soaked it all in, feeling a mixture of pride, excitement, and a deep, unshakable love for her. But what surprised me most was how much closer it brought us. The intimacy we shared, both physical and emotional, was unlike anything I had experienced before. When I came home after each trip, it was like we were rediscovering each other all over again, our connection stronger and more passionate than ever. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, Mary turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Mike," she said, "have you ever thought about taking this a step further?" "What do you mean?" I asked, intrigued. "Well," she began, hesitating slightly, "you've been so open with me about what you want, about letting me explore. But what about you? Have you ever thought about what this could mean for you?" The question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on Mary's happiness, so consumed by the thrill of seeing her explore this new side of herself, that I hadn't considered my own desires. "I don't know," I admitted. "I've never really thought about it. But, maybe." Her smile was gentle, encouraging. "If you ever want to, Mike, I'd support you. Just like you've supported me." Her words stayed with me long after the conversation ended, planting a seed of curiosity in my mind. This journey had already brought us so much closer, what other possibilities lay ahead? Looking back, I realized how far we had come. What had started as a fantasy, a secret desire I was almost too afraid to share, had blossomed into something incredible. Mary and I had built a foundation of trust and honesty that few couples ever achieve. We had faced our fears, embraced our vulnerabilities, and come out stronger on the other side. And as I stood on the porch, watching the sunset with Mary by my side, I felt a deep sense of peace. This was our life, our love, and it was perfect in its imperfection. What are you thinking about? Mary asked, her head resting on my shoulder. About us, I said. And how lucky I am to have you. She smiled, her hands slipping into mine. I feel the same way, Mike. This has been an amazing journey. And I can't wait to see where it takes us next. Neither could I.